Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to visit with Dr. Laura Zib again, and she's going to tell us about what happened when she quit dairy and gluten for 30 days.
For 3 years in a row, I quit gluten and dairy for the month of January. And I also quit them in May and October too. And that's not all I quit. I also quit soy, caffeine, alcohol, and sugar. And a lot of joy. In this video, I'm sharing what happened after 30 days. This is the dark side of healthy eating challenges when healthy eating is taken a little bit too far. I'm Lara, the food freedom psychologist, and I can help you create a healthy and happy relationship with food without guilt or stress eating. If you're getting lots of value from these videos, which I really hope you are, then hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and click that bell notification so that you know every time I post a new video. Side note here, if you are feeling overwhelmed and out of control around food, then you can sign up to my free Food Freedom Masterclass. It's in the links below. It was so many women who have done these kinds of 30-day challenges, and actually it's ended up damaging their relationship with food. In my program, we work through how to live a healthy life, but without imposing really extreme restrictions. We've seen so many incredible transformations with people completely changing their relationship with food and their body image. Before we dive in, I have a question for you. Have you ever done any of these kinds of 30-day challenges? If you have, let me know in the comments below. So here's my story then. I first did one of these 30-day challenges in January 2017. The challenge was to quit gluten, dairy, soy, caffeine, sugar, and alcohol for 30 days. And the idea is that it was a Kickstarter to getting healthy. You were meant to have a protein smoothie in the morning, and then you would eat a light lunch and dinner. Challenge also came with a recipe plan, and you could mix and match these. So I really liked that flexibility. There were shopping lists. There was the protein powder for that breakfast smoothie I mentioned, and also additional supplements that you could take. In preparation for this 30-day plan, I chucked out all the not allowed foods from my cupboards, my fridge, my freezer, and I stocked it with ingredients that I would need for all the cooking from scratch meals that I was going to make. Now, if you had asked me at the time, at the end of that 30 days, I would have said that it was incredible. I would have waxed lyrical about how I felt so much better, how I felt less bloated, that I was sleeping better, and also possibly had boasted about losing a bit of weight. Although I would always caveat and say that I wasn't doing it for the reasons of weight loss, I was doing it for my health. In fact, I was so into these cleanses that I was doing them 3 times a year. So in total, I did 10 of these because the last one was in January 2020. As the years went by, however, I started to wonder whether doing these kinds of challenges were a good idea given my eating disorder history. And you can check out this video here if you want to find out a bit about my story of recovery from bulimia. I also started to wonder whether the fact that I was feeling constantly tired was maybe because I wasn't eating enough. So I want to tell you what happened as a result of doing these 10 challenges. And I think this is probably the dark side of these challenges that not many people are talking about. The number one is the Last Supper effect. Now, just thinking about going on a cleanse or a diet or a detox can trigger what's called Last Supper effect. I obviously didn't know it at the time. But what was happening to me, every time I knew that one of these cleanses was coming up, I would load up on all the quote unquote naughty food in the week beforehand. I would really gorge on these foods knowing that they were going to be off limit for at least a month. And actually, this is something that got worse over time. So it didn't necessarily happen at the beginning, but as we were coming towards maybe my 8th, 9th and 10th, I would really gorge, especially on chocolate. So it definitely got worse over time. Second thing is the cravings and binging. And again, this is something that definitely got worse over time. With each subsequent cleanse, I would experience really extreme cravings for certain foods, but I would often binge on the so-called healthy versions of these foods. For example, On the 30-day challenge, there was these sweet potato brownies that you could make, and they were okay, but they were definitely sweet potato brownies. They weren't like the real chocolatey gooey brownies that you might want to eat. When I baked them, I would get so full on them, and I think now looking back, I know that I was trying to satisfy that craving that I was having, probably for chocolate, and I was trying to satisfy it by binging on these sweet potato brownies. But I never felt satisfied, so I just kept on eating. Number 3 is that following these rigid rules was actually quite stressful. And yes, I totally get that for some people, for medical reasons, you must give up certain foods. Like if you have a nut allergy, you want to avoid nuts at all costs, or if you've got celiac disease, you want to avoid gluten at all costs. I get that. But I had no medical or scientific reason to be giving up these foods. There was a lot of stress surrounding it. I was having to constantly read food labels. I am also a busy working mum, so having to cook from scratch every single day was really quite stressful, even if I was cooking in bulk. Sometimes I was so exhausted after a day's work, but I would continue regardless because I was so wedded to these rules. It also meant that I often ate differently to the family. For example, on the weekends, we normally have like waffles or French toast or pancakes, but I couldn't join in with the family. I think certainly my kids thought it was very strange that I would cook these healthified protein pancakes. And again, they were okay, but they certainly weren't as nice as waffles.
So there is, let's be honest, there is a little antisocial aspect with some of these diets. And I never really thought about it, but when you're making yourself a protein-packed, healthy diet, right? And at the same time, maybe you're making yummy French toast for the kids. That is tiring, that is draining, and it's one of those things that you can keep it up for so long, but you are going to have days where you just don't want to do it. And it is easy to go through that drive-through and get fast food. So if you've had any of these issues that she's describing, let us know down in the comments.
Number 4 is that I had digestive issues. Now, I've actually had digestive issues for quite a long time, and if I look back on my journey with disordered eating, those digestive issues have definitely got worse in periods where my disordered eating is worse. And in fact, in my 20s, that was when I had bulimia. I was diagnosed with IBS, but the doctor didn't ever put 2 and 2 together. So my tummy wasn't happy when I was doing these 30-day plans. And again, that's something that got progressively worse over time. And obviously now in hindsight, I can definitely see that it's probably linked to that disordered eating and the stress. Number 5 is that it totally took the joy out of eating. Now, in my opinion, I feel that eating is about more than just putting nutrients into your body. There's a certain joy in sharing a meal around the table, chatting to friends and family, hanging out with your best mate, going out for meals or cooking for others. There's a joy in eating a real brownie and savoring every bite.
And even though I make little jokes about, Grandma, you want a cookie with me or you want a cake? The reality is there is some camaraderie there with friends and family when it comes to eating a cookie or a cake together, or heck, even just having an ice cream cone. So here's the key to remember. If you end up eating something like that, don't look at it in a defeated point of view like you did something wrong. It's just a part of life. The main thing is the next day when you wake up, go right back to taking your walk, drinking water, and avoiding sugar. And believe it or not, you'll be okay. What's not okay is when you start stressing and going on a binge for the next 3 or 4 weeks. That's not okay. Just enjoy your piece of cake. We'll get back to the routine tomorrow.
There's a joy in sharing waffles with your kids. There's a joy in being able to say yes when your daughter says, "Do you want my last sweet, mummy?" There's joy in sharing a meal out with your partner and having a cocktail together. There's joy in saying yes to a dinner invite without having to send a list of not allowed foods ahead. And there's joy in deciding what you want to eat based on your internal cues rather than having to refer to your meal plan.
Hey, ladies, if your husband right now is saying, "See, I told you, you can have a piece of cake with me, honey," right? Let him know that, hey, it's okay if you want to join a walk and drink some water and avoid sugar with us too. Don't forget about both ways, right?
These 10 challenges made me unnecessarily scared of certain foods, and actually it's taken me so long to be able to comfortably eat a sandwich or enjoy a bowl of cereal or having normal pancakes. In my opinion, these kinds of challenges can create far too much fear-mongering around food. And number 7, it created a very disordered relationship with food for me. 100% these 10 challenges fueled my experience with orthorexia. For me, that was healthy eating taken too far, the dark side of it. And if you want to know more about my story and recovery from orthorexia, you can watch this video here. So having done 10 of these challenges, I can tell you now that I will never go back to such a rigid way of eating, and always ensure that there's flexibility around my food choices. So let me know in the comments below, does any of this resonate? Have you ever been on one of these challenges?
Guys, whenever you do challenges, they are difficult. When you do them, make sure it's something that you want to take on. That's a good challenge, right? If it's something where you know you're going to hate it, maybe think otherwise, okay? Here's one thing you can do, and even if you do eat poorly, it's still healthy. We can go on a walk together. Why don't you go get your shoes? Let's go for a walk. Good morning, venters. One thing that is kind of becoming disturbing, because it's literally happened over the past week or two, is, I keep noticing these houses that are my neighbors' houses that are going up for sale. And this house is the latest one that I've seen. My neighbor here that's been here for at least the past 7 or 8 years, if not longer, has decided they're done. I don't know if they were renters, I don't know if they were owners or what, but all of a sudden, just right here at this one point in the neighborhood, I can see 1, 2, 3 homes that are either for lease or for sale. So we're starting to see some moving and shaking in this neighborhood. And it's a little concerning, simply because I'm sure this is just a microcosm of what's happening all around the country. Imogen even wrote me a message earlier today. She's one of our venters that lives in the UK. And even out where she's living, there's a couple of homes for sale. I don't know if that has to deal with inflation and rising costs out there as well, but she even hinted to the fact that a lot more people are renting and the prices are sky high. So, gosh, I don't know what to make of it other than it just doesn't look very good. I noticed a couple years back when the home prices were surging upward, and I know they're still high, but when they were going upward, people were buying homes. And it's always weird because, technically speaking, to get ahead on life, you're supposed to do the opposite. You're supposed to sell when the costs are going down, or you're supposed to buy, when the costs are going down. And it seems like in this world, a lot of people want to buy their home when the prices start skyrocketing. I told you guys I think I told you guys the other day that my neighbor purchased a house 2 or 3 doors down for an amount that I just thought was astronomically crazy. And she's still living there with her family, but the thing that gets me is, my goodness, unless she came from California and was able to buy her house outright with cash, man, her monthly payment must be sky high. It must be close to like $2,600 a month, I'm guessing. Maybe you guys know better. What is a payment on a $400,000 house cost per month on a 30-year fixed? I mean, my God, that thing must be crazy. And let's hope she got a fixed rate and not one of these adjustable rates, because, oh my God, could you imagine if you woke up one day or one particular year and all of a sudden your already expensive home mortgage went up? Oh my God, that would be crazy. Despite all the houses going up for sale and despite our country going in a really weird trajectory, I've got a couple of good stories here that I wanted to share with you guys. You guys remember the other day I told you about Joey Chestnut? Joey Chestnut has recently taken on a sponsor with Impossible Beef, and he no longer is going to be doing the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Championship, primarily because he's sponsored by this non-meat meat, right? So he's not going to be in that contest anymore. Why do I bring up Joey Chestnut? Am I talking about Joey again today? No, I'm talking about another Chestnut. Guys, there's a guy named Wayne Chestnut that recently graduated from West Virginia's Riverside High School, which is really interesting. Is it just me, or does it seem like the most famous high school name that a school can have out here in the States is Riverside? Isn't that where Saved by the Bell, where Zach and all them went? Wasn't that called Riverside? Anyway, look out here, a real cute cat. Hi, handsome, how are you? Hi, you are a cutie. So anyway, check this out. Wyatt Chestnut graduated from Riverside High School in West Virginia with perfect attendance. Now you're thinking, hey, I knew a kid in high school that had perfect attendance too. No, Wyatt Chestnut had perfect attendance from kindergarten, through 12, his senior year in high school, and he graduated with a 4.2 GPA, and in addition to having perfect attendance all throughout his whole entire school life, he also maintained a 4.2 GPA, wrestled, played soccer, ran track. The guy really was a jack of all trades, doing everything in school, and I just thought it was really interesting that he ended up graduating with complete perfect attendance. I had never heard of such a thing. I remember in my high school we had 2 or 3 kids that had perfect attendance all 4 years. And I bet you they probably had pretty good attendance even before high school. But let's be honest, to go your whole year without ever catching the flu, or your whole career without ever catching the flu or any type of illness like strep throat or something, maybe even chicken pox that would keep you out of school. Guys, that's amazing. So Wyatt, if you're listening, man, congratulations. That is quite an accomplishment. Quick note, Joey's last name is Chestnut, where Wyatt's last name is Chestnut. So close to the same last name, but slightly different. I thought that was fascinating. He actually is planning on attending college where he hopes to become a game and fish warden. So even though he's been inside of a classroom for the last 12 years of his life with perfect attendance, it sounds like his overall goal is to be outside of the office as a game and fish warden. At least I would anticipate and think that game and fish wardens are outside a lot, but maybe that ends up being an office job the further you progress in it as well. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments what your thoughts on that are. Here's another bit of good news. Oh, and by the way, why did I want to share that story? Well, I often tell you guys, and especially if you're new, it might still kind of weird you out when I say this, but most exercise programs are predicated on the idea that for every day that you exercise or go to the gym and work out, you're probably going to have a day of rest, right? So most programs are predicated on working out or exercising 3 or 4 days a week, and they go along with 3 or 4 days a week where you're off from working out so that you can rest and recover. But with walking, I view it much like the Chestnut boy saw school. You have to be here and out here walking every single day to get the most out of it. And even on days where you don't want to walk, my goodness, if you can just try to take a quick walk, it'll be over before you know it, and it'll have just a ton of benefits. I honestly look at every one of my walks from the knowledge point of, hey, I'm killing about 150 calories. And if I take 2 walks a day, I'm killing 300. And guess what? If I take 3 walks a day, I'm killing even more, right? And what happens is at each and every week, you can do the math. You're killing about 2,100 calories if you take 2 walks a day for half hour a pop, right? That's 300 calories times 7,
you're literally eliminated 2,100 calories from your diet each week, which is going to be up there above 8,000 calories a month. Now you can do the math with desserts, and you can say, well, heck, if every time I drink a Coke it's 150 calories, and every month Jesse and I are creating a way where I can eliminate over 2,000 calories from my diet, or excuse me, over 8,000 calories, well, guys, that's gonna free up a lot of room to drink the occasional Pepsi or Coke, which, by the way, you're already drinking. Why not become a calorie burning machine by being out here each and every day? And hey, if you guys think about it, where Wyatt had perfect attendance at school, guys, I've been able to go 100 days now with perfect attendance out here. So the reality is, if I can wake up, in addition to getting out the door, I can get woken up for that extra 10 or 15 minutes that it takes to get my camera and everything ready, I think you guys can walk out the door without a camera pretty easily. So what's your excuse? By the way, Wyatt, my game plan is to go the next 12 years with perfect attendance as well. So I hope you guys can wish me luck. Do I think I'm going to make 12 years of perfect attendance? The odds are probably against me, right? But I'm going to try my darndest to do it, and I hope you do it with me. So there's some more good news. The Oxford University and a private biotech located in Inglewood, California called Imagine AB have created a dye that is engineered to attach itself to a protein called prostate-specific membrane antigen, PSMA. And it's found on the exterior walls of prostate cancer cells. This new dye that they've created enables them to see so much more than what they can with the naked eye. As a matter of fact, the naked eye can almost have 0% chance of distinguishing between cancerous tissues and non-cancerous tissues outside of the tumor itself. So what happens, as a lot of us know with cancer, and not that I'm an expert by any means, but they remove the affected tissue that they can see close to the tumor area, I assume within your body, obviously, right? And then what happens is there's little cells that are invisible to the human eye that are still present, right? They try to take out as much area as they can, and they try to leave as much unaffected, good, healthy tissue around without messing with it, right? But again, their eye is something that they can't trust because they can't really see the good tissue from the bad. This dye changes all that. So we're talking a legitimate game changer. And I just thought that that was really, really exciting. So if we have a situation where this dye can help people that are dealing with prostate cancer woes, they believe that they can kind of change the protein itself to a situation where not only in the future will it be able to detect prostate cancer, but additional cancers as well. So in the future, this dye might be the best way to kind of solve these issues with cancer not recurring. So heck, any movements in the right direction when it comes to people dealing with cancer, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. My Uncle David died of cancer. I believe his was like stomach-related cancer. And it was really sad because, as you guys may or may not know, the last like 10 years of my Uncle David's life, I wasn't really there. The real sad thing, I only lived about 3 miles away. But here's the crazy thing. I remember that my mother and grandmother told me that about 15, 20 years ago, they had taken my Uncle David to the casino. And they've always been avid casino goers. And apparently it was a weird thing where my Uncle David was talking to my mom, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, he just fell down and hit the floor. And I guess it was really a scary situation because they weren't used to it, and neither was my Uncle David. And that was kind of the first sign that something was wrong with him. And obviously they went and, got tested. He went and got tested, and they found out that he had, this horrible ailment, obviously. And it's just really, really sad because, again, I'm age 47 now. When my Uncle David found out that he had cancer, he was in his extremely early 50s. He was like 50 or 51, and he ended up perishing at age 53. And just to know that his last couple years are very close to the years that I'm at now. By the way, one of the first people that really, really was into walking a lot was my Uncle David. The reason that he walked a lot is because he had some mental issues. He actually suffered from schizophrenia, believe it or not. And I don't think many people are very close to their family members that have schizophrenia, because usually the ailment itself kind of alienates people, right? You're not going to find too many people that say, hey, my best buddy has schizophrenia. But under medications, my Uncle David went from being this really hard to deal with person that was unmedicated to, when he was on his medications, he just acted wonderful. You know, so one of these things where I think that's where I and Tom Cruise would disagree, right? Do we want a bunch of people pumped up on medications? Obviously not. But there are some people that if they don't have their medications, oh my God, they can really make living with them impossible. And that's exactly how I would describe my Uncle David. Without his medications, it was like living right next to a gang. What do you mean a gang? Well, with a gang, you're constantly wondering, like, what the heck's going on over there? When my Uncle David was in his fit of schizophrenia, and he was in it for many, many years because he went undiagnosed. God, it was like all the neighbors had a button on the phone ready to call 911. The guy was just a loose cannon. But when he was on his medicine, he became just the most nice person in the world. So it was one of those things where every couple of years he would talk himself into the idea that he no longer needed his medicine, which, by the way, I hear that that's what a lot of people that suffer from schizophrenia, manic depressiveness, bipolar, I hear a lot of times they have trouble staying on their medications. And in his case, he would get so normal on his medicine that he would kind of tell himself, I don't think I need that stuff anymore. And the only way we could tell when he wasn't taking his medicine was, you know, usually a week or two into his experiment, you would start noticing he would say really bizarre off-the-cuff things, and he would just really start acting bizarre. And the crazy thing is we would always have to go through a series of steps to get him back on his medication. And when he got back on his medication, you can imagine it still took him 3 or 4 consecutive days of getting his medicine in his system before he even started acting normal. So it was one of those things where, unfortunately, there were moments in my life growing up where we really were living with kind of a time bomb that was ready to explode. But again, thankfully, the last 20 years of his life, he was pretty committed to taking his medication. He did have a moment or two where he did pop off of it when I had moved out, but it was those moments where my grandma would call and say, hey, is there any way you can come and talk to David, see if you can help us talk him into getting back on his medicines. And so even when I did come visit my Uncle Dave the last couple years of his life, a lot of times it was a situation where it wasn't really him I was talking to. It was this shell of himself that I was trying to get him to get back on his medications. What's really weird is that he was probably always about 170 or 180 pounds. And his last couple years of his life, he ballooned up to like 240 or 250, and he just looked like the Michelin Man, very inflamed, very puffy. And I sometimes wonder if that kind of fed into the cancer and the different things that were going on with his body because of people like Stacy, who we've met, that have kind of educated us on the idea that when you're obese, it can have a lot more problems to deal with your health than you would, than you might think. Because, usually when people deal with cancer, you're thinking that that's one line of a problem that they're dealing with, right? You don't necessarily equate that to the fat in their body. But again, thanks to you guys and thanks to Stacy, I've been able to learn that, hey, there's a real advantage to trying to walk and keep your fat off of your body. If sugar and fats feed cancers, until we come up with an actual cure for cancer, one of the things that we need to do is keep walking. I guess the interesting thing about my Uncle David is, despite walking constantly, he still ballooned up to 240 or 250 pounds. What made it so devastating was, in the last 3 or 4 months of his life, he actually shrunk down, get this, to 120 pounds. Look at that beautiful red bird right there. Look at that, gorgeous. You don't see colorful birds very often here in Arizona. Most of them are brown and, kind of the color of the desert. But that was a beautiful, vibrant red bird. God, guys, I wish you could feel the humidity out here. It is just miserable. I mean, it feels nice that the sun's behind clouds, but it feels like I just popped out of a shower. It's just like really not very fun. We got a broken sprinkler here that's literally raining on the, holy moly. All right, I'll cross the street. Was that God forcing me across the street? Is that sprinkler system forcing me over here? So imagine seeing a guy and he's 240 pounds and he's your uncle and you're used to seeing him at about, $180. So all of a sudden you're like, holy moly, David, what the heck are you eating? You're eating well. And then you find out that he's got cancer. And then literally within the next 4 or 5 months, which, do the math, that's only 120, 150 days, he went from 240 pounds to where he passed away at like 120 pounds. It was really, really sad. I remember one of the last things that I did with my Uncle David was I came and visited him. It was just me and him. And I gave him a hug and I told him I loved him. And he was so tired that he wasn't even sad. He was just like, I love you too. And he went right back to, taking a nap or whatever he was doing. And it was just really, really sad. I had another Uncle Jeff who died in 2019 due to alcoholism. 2019 or 2020, he just died a couple years back. And the difference between him and my Uncle David was legitimately schizophrenic. Yet when he was on his medication, he was the nicest person in the world. My Uncle Jeff was an alcoholic. And over the last 15 years of his life, he never even attempted to try to get sober again. For the first X amount of years of his alcohol addiction, he would occasionally catch himself and say, my God, I've got to get off the alcohol. It's killing me. But he was never able to shake it, And that's where I try to tell myself that no matter how many problems I think I have in life, almost everybody is dealing with their own situation, And it's such a bummer when these things happen. And I think that's why a lot of us do have faith. I think a lot of us have kind of thrown our hands up when it comes to this world. There's so much stress, there's so much grief, there's so many things that don't quite go our way in this world. And I think it's natural that when you have that type of situation for a lot of us, right? A common ground that we all share, we all have our own challenges, right? And sometimes those challenges seem darn near impossible to get over. And the idea that maybe one day you'll take your final breath on this world and wake up in another world where there's eternal bliss, I definitely could see how that would be attractive to a lot of people, And it's really weird because if you were to meet me in real life, I don't really talk about these doom and gloom, dreadful subjects very much. But sometimes when I'm on my walk and I dive into my think tank, it just reminds me like, God, I really wish I have a time machine, but in the past, I always wanted a time machine so I could change my future. Now the only thing I want a time machine for is so I could spend more time with those people that I don't really have that option to spend time with anymore. Does that make sense? Are any of you guys like that? I mean, I'm okay with the poverty that I've experienced. I'm okay with the relationships that I've experienced that didn't end up lasting forever. I'm okay with those things because that's human nature, right? Sometimes we grow up together, sometimes we grow up and apart from one another, right? What I'm not okay with is that I had a lot of friends and family members that I didn't stay in touch with, and now that I really wish I could reach out to those people, it's no longer an option. And that's kind of an unacceptable thing that, despite how unacceptable it is, I can't really change. But what I can do, and what I urge you guys to do, is we can learn from these experiences that we've already gone through, and we can make that positive change going forward. And that's why I urge a lot of you guys, if you have an aunt or an uncle or a family member in period, or a friend that you haven't really reached out to, reach out to them. They could be going through a lot of these same situations that I'm thinking of. They could be going through a life where they feel very alone and isolated. They could be going through a life where they feel like absolutely nobody cares. And if you're able to give them a phone call, you might be able to get that horrible thought out of their mind. Good morning. You know? And again, I think we've all gone through little bouts of the blues or the depression ourselves, right? And one of the best things that can happen when you're feeling blue or depressed is to get a call out of the blue from a friend or family member that says, hey, you know, cheer up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, go get your clothes on, I'm taking you out, we're gonna go to lunch, we're gonna go to dinner, let's go to a movie. Sometimes you need that friend to wake you up and bring you back to a decent life. You know, a lot of us have happy lives, but we don't necessarily appreciate those happy moments. You know, this morning, you had breakfast with your kids, you had breakfast with your husband or your wife. God darn it, that's a good win. That's a good moment. But we don't really think of it as a good moment because maybe that's the umpteenth time you've had breakfast with your wife or husband, you know? But you never know what the day is gonna bring. You know, people die every single day of car crashes. People die every single day because, you know, they get attacked on a subway. Weird things happen. And all of a sudden that chance to reach out to people could be gone. And I don't want you guys to lose that. So I want you guys to stay happy. I want you to know that part of the reason that I assume you're on this journey of walking and trying to lose weight is because you'd like to live a little longer. But if you're solitary and you're isolated and you're not reaching out to your friends and family on the regular, then what's the point of wanting to live longer? You know? And if you're the only person in your life, there are no friends and family, which is the situation with some people out there, then my God, I wouldn't blame you one bit if you never wanted to diet or exercise. You know? Some people view this life as one big movie. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a 3.5-hour movie. It could be an hour and a half, you know? And when I look at people like my Uncle David that passed away at the age of 53, golly, I'd be willing to bet that at age 26, there was no part of him that thought, my God, I'm already halfway through my life. And that's gonna happen to some of us, by the way. Could you imagine as a 25 or 26-year-old thinking, hey, my life is halfway over? That would be a darn shame. If it were up to me, if we could all as a people live until a certain age, I think I would make that age 85 or 86, you know? Something where we could experience the elderly ages without going too overboard into it. And if during that 85 or 86 years of age, if we could go through it without senility, without Alzheimer's, without dementia, without too many physical problems like debilitating arthritis. God, have you ever seen these people with arthritis? Oh my goodness, the things that happen to our knuckles and our joints as we get older, it's just awful. And everybody that has arthritis will tell you they can actually tell when it's gonna rain because their joints start to hurt because of the extra moisture in the air. Now that's kind of cool, right? That you have this detection system within you, but at the same time, what a horrible detection system. Every time it's moist outside, your bones and joints start to hurt like crazy. And again, I don't think I've ever seen a person with real bad arthritis where I didn't think, golly, that looks painful. You know, so if you're starting to deal with arthritis, my goodness, I'm sorry you're going through that. I don't know if walking helps with that, but if it does, get your shoes on. Let's start walking. Maybe we can avoid those problems together, you know? I love walking. It helps me think of these things. Sometimes it's real easy to go a long time without calling your buddy from college or your buddy from high school. If you have a best friend that you haven't talked to in a long time, call them. There's a reason I'm telling you to call them. There might be some sort of grief or turmoil in their life, and they might be just needing somebody like you to call and give them a pep talk and cheer them up. On the other hand, you might be feeling blue, and by calling them, they might be able to come back into your life and really change it for the better, you know? So with that being said, I've decided to start a Facebook group. It's the Walk Talk Vent group. It should be up in my channel description if you guys want to join. And one of the people that I invited was my friend Jason Hensley, who's no longer alive. And another person that I've decided to invite is Chris Rademacher, my old high school best friend. I don't know if he'll join the group, but if he ever does and starts watching our videos, maybe he'll watch a couple of the videos where I discussed and talked about him. And who knows, maybe that's a way to leave a door open for a future where maybe we can reunite and become friends again. So if this describes you, if you have some old friends that you haven't connected with in a while, why don't you give them a call? Other than that, have a great day. We'll talk tomorrow.